Alright, welcome back to our podcast. I'm the gentleman, accompanied by the disturbed Southern Belle.
Hello.
And in this episode, we'll be covering part of the story of Franz Joseph Haydn. More accurately, the story that most people who know that name, what they know that name from. So, it's the story of Haydn's head. So, the great composer died in 1809 in Vienna at the age of 77. Decent age for that time.
True enough. It is.
Actually, fairly long lived for that
That's
time.
not a young age today in today's standards. I mean,
Well, no, it's not
it's
really.
not, the longest living person, but it's, more common.
Either way, he was buried in a local cemetery in Vienna, as I said, where his body lay undisturbed for a grand total of 8 days.
Well, good long while then, huh?
Yep. Then, in the thick of the night, 2 men who had bribed the sexton dug up the now somewhat decomposed body, as it was the beginning of June. They severed the head from Haydn's body and just carted it off.
Yeah.
They were students of the now discredited science of phrenology, which sought to link the shape and size of the brain and skull with mental capacity. The leading light in this field, Professor Gall, had been expelled from Austria by the emperor at the time a few years before, because even then the work was rather controversial.
Right.
Wonder why.
Couldn't imagine. Sounds pretty legit.
So, oddly enough, Beethoven's body was subject to a similar attempt a few years later, but fortunately, that attempt was foiled. So for 11 years, Haydn's body lay in the Vienna cemetery without anyone even aware that it was missing his head. Then, in 1820, the Duke of Cambridge visited with his friend, Prince Esterhazy, I think is how you pronounce the name,
Okay.
in Eisenstadt. He persuaded the prince that someone as great as Haydn ought to be buried with the appropriate pomp and circumstance in the prince's family seat.
Right.
So, the Bergkirche, I know I'm pronouncing that wrong, was selected for the funeral. The preparations were made and the body was exhumed in Vienna, and it was at that time, naturally, that the theft had been apparent.
That is so crazy.
It is. So many years had passed.
Yeah, that too.
Also, why would you steal a skull? I get that it was a famous person.
I don't know.
How could you even prove the skull was theirs?
I don't know if it was just a skull. I don't know how you prove anything in regards to just a skull.
Especially at that time. There weren't the sciences we have now.
That, and then even if they got it out and it was decomposing, it would be hard to prove who it was, to recognize who it was. You know what I'm saying?
Also, another thing, they lopped off his head as he was decomposing.
Yeah.
That is just disgusting.
It is on so many levels.
Just disgusting and awful.
It is. It's very much so. Agreed.
Anyways, the prince had naturally called in the authorities. The skull was being kept, as they would later find out, in a rather beautiful custom-made black wooden box, complete with windows and a white cushion. The thieves managed to hide it in a straw mattress before their houses were searched. One of the wives would even lay in the bed pretending to be ill so that it was not searched.
Oh, God.
Eventually, they did hand over a skull, but it was not Haydn's.
Okay. This gets better and better.
The fraud soon came to light, however, and the quote-unquote other skull was kept with Haydn's body in Eisenstadt.
Right.
The prince, however, ordered that the sarcophagus intended for Haydn must stay empty until the real skull was reunited with its owner. The sarcophagus remained empty for over 130 years, with no bones and no skull. So, meanwhile, the real skull was later gifted by Wild in 1895 to the world-famous Musikverein in Vienna. The organization refused to hand it over because, of course, and they actually brought it out on occasion to show visitors.
Oh, dear God.
They use it as a prop.
That's awful.
They use a human skull as a prop.
Yeah, I'm hearing it. It's awful.
On
so many levels. But, yeah.
Anyways, in 1932, a beautiful marble tomb for Haydn was built in the Bergkirche. I can't pronounce it. by the then head of the Esterhazy family, but again with the order that no funeral would take place whilst the stalemate continued. In 1938, Austria became part of the Third Reich. In 1945, it was divided into 4 zones of occupation. Burgenland, where Eisenstadt was located, fell under Soviet control. The occupation lasted 10 years, rather quite a bit shorter than neighboring Germany, and in 1955, the powers agreed to pull out and grant Austria sovereignty again. Just before their departure, however, the local Soviet commander decided to use his power to ensure justice would be done to Haydn and his head. The skull was taken from the Musikverein and delivered by the Russians to the prince in Eisenstadt. So there followed, 145 years after his death, a full funeral procession through the streets of Eisenstadt for the now long-dead composer. Haydn's skull was reunited with his skeleton, and the marble tomb was used for the first time. There it actually lies to this day in the stunning marble tomb at the entrance of the church.
Right.
And, oddly enough, the quote-unquote other skull that had lain with Haydn's body for well over a century, while no one had really figured out who it belonged to, it was buried in the crypt of the church. And since 2008, there has been a plaque on the floor in honor of, quoting here, the skull of the unknown person. End quote.
That makes it sad too, because
It
that could
does.
have been.
That's just a random person's skull.
Yeah, I mean, it's not funny, but I mean, that's somebody, somebody's probably loved one or whatever, and Jesus.
Also makes you wonder how they got that skull.
I don't.
I'm assuming they just buried it up from a random grave.
That'd be my guess. Yeah, and I'm guessing they
Either that or they killed someone.
possibly.
I wouldn't put it past them. They're grave robbers.
Doesn't sound like it. No, it doesn't sound like they have a lot of scruples, so to speak. So
Seeing as how they literally chopped off Haydn's head as he was decomposing 8 days after the funeral,
yeah,
I wouldn't put it past them to kill someone.
no, I don't either. No, they're just more interested in the money at that juncture.
Yeah.
Or something. I don't care what they're saying. I'm very shocked to think that they're doing it because of examine his skull. I guarantee you it was more to it than that.
Oh, absolutely.
That's so stupid. But whatever.
Anyways, so the next one is about another honestly, probably the most well-known musician of, well, pretty much all time, Mozart. So, this one is Requiem in D minor. Or about Requiem in D minor, rather.
Right.
So, a Requiem Mass is already pretty morbid with its themes of death and damnation.
Right.
But the origins of Mozart's last composition, which was incomplete at the time of his death, rather famously, kind of compound upon that. Legend has it that Mozart, bedridden and suffering from a fever, was approached by a shadowy figure to compose the work, and he began to believe that he was writing his own Requiem.
Right.
This myth was immortalized in the 80s classic Amadeus, in Peter Shaffer's play and subsequent film adaptation. It is a jealous Salieri who approaches Mozart disguised as the commendator,
Right.
from Don Giovanni, who himself had a habit of dragging people down into hell to commission the work, which, if that is the case, you see why Mozart would be rather terrified.
Yeah, I'd say so. If he legitimately believed that was what was happening, sure. Absolutely see it.
But again, that was from a play and a film, so
Exactly.
liberties were taken with the story.
Oh, I'm sure.
Anyways, rather than a figure from the depths of hell, it was arguably a character much worse who commissioned the work, a German count and a fraudster named Franz von Walsegg, who frequently ripped off other composers' works as his own.
Nah.
A regular Thomas Edison.
I don't know.
So, the fact that Mozart died whilst composing the Requiem, and the fact that it was left incomplete at the time of his death, adds to the rather supernatural or uneasy aura to the Requiem.
Right.
Which contains some of what is considered the most dramatic and haunting music he ever wrote. So yeah, short and sweet.
Yeah, on that one, definitely.
The next is about Rosemary Brown. So perhaps the most bizarre and spooky of all compositional inspirations comes from a little known English composer named Rosemary Isabel Brown,
Right.
a pianist and spirit medium, oddly enough, who claimed that dead composers dictated her musical works to her, or new musical works to her, rather.
Sounds feasible.
So Brown, who died in 2001, claimed that each composer had had his own way of dictating to her. Liszt controlled her hands for a few bars at a time, and then she wrote down the notes. Chopin told her the notes and pushed her hands onto the right keys. Schubert tried to sing his compositions, and Beethoven and Bach simply dictated the notes. Kind of odd that a lot of history's biggest composers and musicians would be the ones to contact this one person.
One random woman, sure.
Yeah, this one random woman.
Mm-hmm. And dictate music to her, because why not?
Also, another thing, each person would have their own style of music.
Very much so.
So you would be able to tell at least a little bit if she was faking very easily.
Well, you would think if they put forth any effort, yes.
And they figured out she was faking very easily.
No. You're crazy.
So she had claimed that the composers all spoke to her in English. First red flag.
Yeah, fair enough.
Remarkably, there has been some doubt as to the veracity of Brown's claims. Psychologist Robert Kassenbaum analyzed Brown's compositions and concluded that it was highly unlikely that they were dictated by spirits, remarking that there are no striking themes, complex structures, depths of feelings, or harmonic, tonal, or rhythmic innovations. So, yeah. Whatever the truth is, it seems fair to say that no matter how much you like a composer, it'd probably be better if they didn't contact you from beyond the grave.
Yeah, or at least not lie about it anyway, right?
Or at least don't lie about it.
I mean,
You absolutely know she just did that for, clout, as it would be called nowadays.
Of course, absolutely.
Because big names helped her compose this music.
Duh.
Big names who are long dead.
I mean, huge names.
The biggest names, some would say.
Pretty much in that time, especially, yeah.
Hell, even in this time, really.
Well, I mean, right, but I mean, you know what I'm saying? In that genre of music, absolutely some of the biggest names. Just huge names.
Anyways, moving on. Next story is about an Austrian composer named Gustav Mahler, who maintained a grim fascination with death throughout his life. Born into a large family into an era where infant mortality was shockingly high, he had witnessed the deaths of several of his siblings. In the third movement of his Symphony No. 1, Mahler actually adapts the popular nursery rhyme Frere Jacques into a minor key, which completely flips the effect of the music. Mahler recalled how he was inspired by witnessing the coffins of his siblings being carted away. The use of the nursery rhyme is actually typically typically called a Mahlerian gesture.
Right.
And the dark story behind the piece is still, as some would call it, haunting listeners to the day.
That is creepy and sad in a way.
It is. Next is actually someone who was mentioned earlier in the story, or in this episode rather, Liszt. Specifically his Totentanz. So if you like macabre music, then it's safe to say you might like Liszt, spelled Liszt for those who don't know.
Right.
Again, I'm most likely mispronouncing all of these names because they're foreign names.
Right. It's okay. We do the best we can.
Yeah. Anyways, the song was it was subtitled Paraphrase of Désiré or something like that. Again, foreign language, unfamiliar to me.
Right.
It translates to Day of Wrath. This piece was considered and still is deeply menacing right from the off, with the blaring lower brass punctuated by deathly marching themes in the trumpet and piano. The story behind this piece is just as morbid as the music itself. So Liszt, the quintessential romantic figure, was obsessed with death. In addition to Totentanz, he also composed Funeray, or Funerale. Again,
Right.
the spelling is weird from my point of view. American English speaker, so He also composed many others, which I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce, all of which show a fascination with the subject of death. It is perhaps unsurprising that, given the young Liszt was living in a Paris that was reeling from the terrors of the French Revolution,
Right.
and the fact that the guillotine was still being used for public executions.
Right.
So death was everywhere, but clearly that wasn't enough for Liszt, who was a regular at Parisian hospitals and asylums in the early 1830s and was known to pay visits to prisoners held in dungeons who were condemned to die. He perhaps needed some more friends.
Evidently.
Those who were close to death.
Yeah, why not?
So that said, it was this gruesome backdrop that gave rise to these morbid, but some would call fun pieces of music, which inspired composers of horror film scores more than a century later.
That's cool.
Next is a romantic composer named Robert Schumann, who had a rather turbulent life with several episodes of overwhelming depression that quite literally haunted him. Despite this, or rather because of it, he was able to write some of the most beautiful pieces of classical music ever written, some of which I've actually listened to. His Nachtstück, very much butchered that, I know I did. It was composed in a truly gruesome circumstance. He had premonitions of his brother's death and had planned to call his new composition Corpse Fantasia. Quoting here, I always saw funeral processions, coffins, unhappy and despairing people. Often I was so distraught that tears flowed, and I didn't know why. Then Edward's wife, Teresa's letter arrived, and I knew why, Edward being his brother.
Right.
Despite these horrible circumstances, the 4 miniature pieces that comprised the Nachtstück are very expressive, lyrical, and some would say delicate, but it's hard to shake off the feeling of the grim aura that surrounds it, especially knowing the circumstance.
Exactly.
So that's it for this episode. A very
interesting
episode, definitely.
Oh, yeah. It's cool to learn about things like that in a way. I mean, just
It is.
Things that you didn't know, especially where some of these things came from and how weird some people were, to be honest.
It's especially kind of surreal when it's actually an artist you listen to.
That, and I mean, just some of them, you just never really heard some of these stories about how strange they were. You never realized anything about it, really, or thought about it, or I haven't on some,
Right.
So it's interesting. Absolutely.
Anyways, before we close out this episode, I do recommend going back and actually looking or listening to these pieces. I have heard a lot of them.
Some of them are really, actually kind of pretty.
They are.
I mean,
they're really good.
Just
Again, depending on what you
depends
like.
on your, the music you like. But yeah, if you have any classical type music, yeah, absolutely.
But that's going to be it for this episode. If you liked it and want to hear more, please subscribe, do all the stuff that you do for content creators that you like. And I'll turn it over to the bell for the proper outro.
So we're going to be having a few more episodes of our music series, and then we're going to move on to something else briefly. If there's anything that you're interested in us covering during this series, just let us know. We'll be happy to look into it. Don't forget to follow, and subscribe, and don't forget to
stay disturbed.